Having an exceptional relationship with your spouse affects every single aspect of your life and is crucial for experiencing your dream life together. I'm Rob Murgatroyd.
And I'm Kim Murgatroyd. Listen in on our honest, filter-free conversations as we navigate life and business together without killing each other.
You'll learn by osmosis how to transform the friction you feel in your relationship into a purposeful foundation that will allow you to grow together.
Welcome to the Friday Podcast.
Kimberly Toscana Murgatroyd, how are you today?
I am wonderful.
Would you name a child Toscana?
No.
Would you name her? Do you think that the name Toscana Murgatroyd has a ring to it?
No.
You don't at all?
No. I think anything, first of all, when we were naming Sophia, it was like we needed a simple name to go with Murgatroyd because it couldn't have been like Penelope Murgatroyd. It would just be way too much for a bubble sheet.
My brother Victor came up with this idea once for a name. He said, I have a weird artist brother. And one day he goes, you know what the greatest name for a girl in the South would be? I'm like, oh God, what? He goes, mayonnaise. And I was like, mayonnaise. He goes, mayonnaise. I was like, that's actually not bad.
And there's most likely someone with that name because there's Apple, there's all kinds of names.
Well,
so
it works with Murgatroyd. How would you go with mayonnaise Murgatroyd?
Would her nickname be Mayo or May?
It would be
in the South. It would be May. What's May short for? Mayonnaise.
This is not
what we're talking about today.
But what we are talking about today is, I did an interview yesterday with Gay Hendricks is his name, and he's got a new book out, and it's called, wait for it, Genius Zone. So you've heard the term zone of genius before. If you haven't, we're going to explain it today. His new book is a little twist on those two words.
But didn't he coin this phrase?
He came up with the phrase. So he is, I think he's like early 80s, maybe. He's been writing, I think he's written 50 books, but his most famous book is called The Big Leap. And that got him on Oprah. And
with the goldfish on the cover.
With the goldfish on the cover. And when you get on Oprah, your life changes. Oprah.
Call me.
So, okay. Here's what he said to me, which I thought was super powerful. And I'm going to encourage you to turn this podcast off after I give the assignment for you to actually do the assignment, because it's not going to work. And I know 99% of you are not going to do this, but it's okay. This sentence that I'm about to read you, I'm going to give you specific instructions. I'm going to explain the instructions first. I'll tell you what the sentence is, and then I'll re-explain the instructions in context. Here's the instructions. Go into a room, quiet.
Well, can you tell me about the zone of genius first?
I'm going.
Yeah, but before you get to the instructions, they need to understand the concept because you have read the books, you did the interview, and let someone who hasn't read the books and didn't do the interview guide this, okay? So explain zone of genius.
You're so snarky. You're just snarky.
I'm helping the listener out.
You are snarky.
I'm playing the role of the listener because they're all literally yelling at their stereos right now saying, we don't even know what you're talking about. Or they've already ended this podcast.
You're playing a role. Okay, so here is the zone of genius. The zone of genius is that zone of things that you are really fucking good at, right? So here's the question. And I'll explain a little bit after the question. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do while making the greatest contribution to the world? Okay, so what is zone of genius? Zone of genius is that zone where you are doing the thing that you most love to do. It's as simple as that.
Okay, but I have a question. Because if you said, Kim, what's your zone of genius? I would say I have no idea. But is your zone of genius the thing you love to do, or is there a sweet spot between loving to do it and actually good at it? Because if I said I love to sing and that's my zone of genius, I think you would probably argue against that being my zone of genius. So is there some sort of a sweet spot in there? Is it just what you love to do, or do you love to do it and you're good at it?
Being good at it is actually not one of the things that meet the criteria, I don't believe. And I didn't write the fucking book. Okay. I interviewed the guy, but I didn't write the book. So I can't.
What kind of interviewer are you?
You're asking me nuanced questions about his concepts. So, Gay, if you're listening,
help me.
And I fucked
out.
this up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But based upon my conversation with him yesterday, because I gave him some examples and I said, look, for my other podcast that I do on Next Chapter, I have a lot of people that, are doing something that they don't really, they're good at it. Like for me, I use the example for me. I said, I was a really, really good chiropractor, but if one more person told me their neck or back hurts, I was going to shoot myself. I couldn't do it anymore. Like I was good at it, but I don't want to do it.
Hold on. I have an idea. Our editor should take that soundbite of if one more person, because that's your soundbite on being a chiropractor.
Yeah.
He should just take that and insert it wherever he feels it's necessary. So you never have to say it again because you have it so down. It's like you've been saying it so anyway, I'm sorry. I'm feisty.
So snarky. There's a lot. It's
a lot of snark today.
You're full of snark.
I'm a snarkopotamus.
Hail Mary, full of snark.
All right,
Blessed
go ahead.
is thou among us.
Go ahead.
So
we don't know if you actually have to be good at this thing.
No,
you just have to really enjoy it.
I do know because I fucking asked him.
You just said you didn't know.
I said I'm not an authority on
do
the
I need
nuance.
Do I need to have the editor rewind this one too?
We need a fucking marriage counselor. So here's what
Gottman, are you listening?
Here's what he said. He said, look, if this is something that you're good at, but you don't love, it's not in your zone of genius anymore, by definition.
Okay, you just answered the question. If you're good at it, you don't love. But what if you love it and you're not good at it?
I'm going to tell you what I think the editor should do. I think the editor should delete everything I say and leave all your snark and string just your snark together in one, so you could actually hear yourself.
You know what would be great is if he did all the snark together and just made a reel out of snark. All right, that's how this day is going to go. If you're still listening with all two of you, go ahead, Rob.
All right, so ask yourself this question. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do? Let's stop there. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what?
You can't even read your own handwriting right now. This is the best because you always give me shit for not being able to read your handwriting and you can't read it.
But by the way, if the ratings drop on this episode, it is completely your fucking fault. You trashed this show. You literally, we are
about to go in the giggles,
going down in a ball of fucking flames. Okay, I have a serious concept that could change somebody's life, and you're shitting all over it.
You can't read your own handwriting. You don't know the book. You can't read your handwriting. What good is this show?
I'm not going to be able to get through this. Because now you're not going to stop laughing. Okay, this is what's going to. This is what's going.
All right, go ahead. Oh my god!
How do we get out of this? What is the way to get out of the giggles?
Pineapple. I can't. Okay. All right. Ready?
Right.
Zone of genius. Do you want me to sing, and we can see if it's my zone of genius?
Well, let me turn the tables on you.
Yeah.
What do you think your zone of genius is?
I mean, I don't want to rewrite the book, but I think I don't know what my zone of genius is. Apparently, fucking up a podcast, but
just as a concept, don't get so wrapped up in the.
I'm not. Well, that for me to determine what my zone of genius is, it sort of feels like it has to be something I'm interested in. And something I
love to do.
Okay, something I love to do, and something that like I have a bit of strength in that area. Like I just
not necessarily. It's the thing. Okay, so here's the example that he used.
Okay,
he said you can discover it by looking closely at what you love to do. So let's say, for example, sailing is something you love to do. There's something in that, and he told the story of a dentist that he was doing some work with, and the dentist said He said, well, what do you love to do? What are some things you love to do? He goes, poetry. And he's like, poetry? When was the last time you did that? He said, shit, like I was in high school. He said, okay, we're going to sit down. We're going to write a poem. He's like, I don't even know what to write a poem. He said, write about things that you're doing in your life. He's like, I'm a dentist. Like I drill. I'm writing. He said, we're going to write a poem about dentistry. He's like, what are you talking about? He said, let's just sit down. And he said, we wrote 3 poems about dentistry. The third one was amazing. Long story short, those poems wound up getting submitted into dentistry magazines. And now he's known as the poet dentist who goes and speaks at dental conventions and he reads his poetry. Okay, so that's an extreme example.
Well, he's obviously, so this is my point. If he's reading his poetry at conventions, if he sucked at it, no one would want to listen. So there has to be a sweet spot in this. And the reason I'm putting effort into this point is because there's a difference for me between something I love to do and it's a hobby, or it's just something that's fun, or something that I would literally call my zone of genius. I like to dance, but I am not a good dancer. And so I think that calling that my zone of genius would be a bit extreme. And I feel like it would be ridiculous. But if I said something like, okay, so I'll give you what might be my zone of genius.
Okay.
By the way, it feels, it's hard to say those words in a way. It feels very ego-based.
We're going to get to that. I have a thought on that. He has a thought on that.
Okay. So I will say one thing that I feel like in my current life, where I am right now, my current zone of genius feels like taking concepts that we learn, such as this one, zone of genius, and making it child friendly and teaching it to Sophia.
Perfect example. You're amazing at that. That's why you're writing books.
I'm good at that. Your first thing out of your mouth was you're amazing at that. I actually love it, but I'm actually good at it. And I'm going to start writing a book about that. And so that to me, that's why it feels like it has to be a sweet spot.
I think you are probably right. But let me give you another example. Okay. So we'll switch gears. I'll take the heat off you. I'll put it on me. If I think about, now, again, to your point, which is really an important point, when you say the word genius associated with you, like you think of the Apple, the Apple bar. I'm sure the day that the tech showed up for work for the first time and decided that he was going to be the genius behind the bar before it became, ubiquitous, it was probably like, I don't know fucking everything about every computer problem, right?
Oh, you know what? Interesting. So there was Geek Squad, and then there's the Apple Bar Genius.
Genius bar,
or whatever. I'd rather be the genius than the geek.
Yeah.
There's an ego in that, right? Let me give you one other example. I love to cook. I would not say it's my zone of genius. I have cooking anxiety if I cook for other people that are not my family, because I'm definitely not to the level of what I think I should be, but I love to cook. Okay,
hold on. Let's stay right in that pocket there.
Yeah.
The goal is for you to live in your zone of genius full time. Okay. All right. So stay with me. I have listened to you talk about cooking for years. I have listened
cooking and writing. Those are the two things.
You talk about cooking, writing, and dancing. Those 3. Dancing would be the lowest of the 3, but
I think I'm over that one.
It's still in the top. I would put that. You just said it yourself. It's still in the top 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but let's not even debate that one. Let's just go with cooking and writing. Okay.
Yeah.
Your definite, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know that you're right or wrong, but the emphasis that you're putting on the definition, the emphasis that you're putting on living in that zone of genius is how good you are at that zone of genius. Let me just get this point out. At that zone of genius.
You just shushed me.
So I don't want to forget it. The idea of you cooking, okay? If you could live in that zone of genius full time, and by full time, I don't mean go out and be a chef. I mean, if that was part, let's say that there was a pie, 100% pie, and a significant slice of that pie, pun intended, significant, you just love that, right? A significant slice of that pie was you taking cooking classes like at Chibreo, you were looking at you were looking at that, and you were doing things like that. To my mind, based on the interview that I did with him and listening to the book, The goal is for you to be living in a place that you're happy with, a place that you enjoy. So if you're enjoying writing and cooking at that level, for me, that is your zone of genius, because there's an element, there's an essence. He said you bring a quality of attention to something when you're doing something that you love versus something that you are merely good at. So let's just say that you are really good at XYZ thing, but you love cooking. You're not necessarily really good at it, your words. You're not necessarily really good at it, but you love it. You're bringing a quality of attention to this because you love it. And I would bet if he were here, he would say that would foster a seed of growth and change over time.
Okay, so that's what, as you were explaining it, I was thinking, so the example I gave with taking these concepts and making them child-friendly, I'm in that zone of genius, which is why I feel compelled to write a book, to share that. Cooking feels like my next chapter zone of genius, because my zone of genius in cooking, I don't feel like I'm there yet. And I love it, but I would love it more if I knew what I was doing. Right now, I'm a bit of a monkey where if I find someone who wrote a great recipe, because there's a ton of shitty recipes. If I find someone that wrote a great recipe, Kylie Flavelle with her baking recipes, the Pasta Queen with her pasta recipes. If I find a great recipe, Savoring the Flavoring, if you don't follow her on Instagram, follow her. She makes the best everything. These people have great recipes. I can monkey and do what they tell me to do, and I can create a result. And I can, over time, perfect that result. So I think my baking skills are better than my meal skills, but I feel like this is something that, because I love it so much, I would love to do it more often. And to do it more often, I would be inspired, because I love it, to go to a cooking class, go to a cooking school, and really learn. And then I might say, cooking is in my zone of genius. But right now, it might be a future zone of genius. I don't know if that exists. But right now, I wouldn't land my plane there.
Okay, well, let's now let's go back to that top question on that whiteboard there. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do? Let's take out zone of genius. Let's not even do that. Here's his point. Whether you call it zone of genius or not, the zone of genius is a concept. His point is, if you look at that second one there, the goal is to live in that, he's calling that the genius zone full time, right?
But you can have more than one.
You can have 20.
You can. So if you,
you know what his zone of genius, I asked him, I said, what is your zone of genius outside of writing books around psychology, self-help psychology? He said, you're not going to believe this.
What?
And I was like, what? He said, I've authored 15 books on a Tibetan detective who cracks cases in Tibet.
Like fiction?
Like fiction.
Or
like fiction.
Based on a true story?
No. In his mind. He made up a character that's a Tibetan detective.
Interesting.
And he cracks cases in Tibet.
Interesting.
Because he loves it. He loves to get lost in the fantasy of his mind about what this detective is uncovering and what he's doing. So his point is more that when you love to do something, there's a seed, there's an element, there's an attention, there's a focus, there's an intangible thing that you bring to it because you love it, regardless of whether or not you excel at it. You just fucking love it.
Okay, this brings up another question. When someone says, what is your zone of genius? Without reading the book, just with what has circulated in society with that phrase. When someone brings that up, more often than not, people lean into business. So far, you've told me about poetry, writing about a detective in Tibet, and none of these things initially came from thinking, what's my zone of genius? And then, in quotes, in business. But I think that's where people go, because when you initially said that to me, I went into like, oh, well, I'm a good strategy person, right? But I don't necessarily love to do strategy. It's actually something I can't help doing. but it's not something I'm super passionate about. Like I wouldn't take strategy coaching sessions. Like I'm not that excited about it. So my default would be to something I'm good at naturally and business over what I love to do, which is really interesting because he coined the goddamn phrase. Isn't it interesting that we screw up everything and we make it all about what you're good at in business instead of what you love to do naturally?
We naturally do it. That's more of like, I would say, an American trait. And by American, I mean like
anything tangential to
Canada, Australia, like
UK.
It's sort of like UK.
I think that's kind of all of it.
Yeah, it's kind of all of it. He uses an example in the book. Maybe this will shed a little bit more light. It just popped into my my getting very old cerebral brain. He said a friend of his is a lawyer, and he was over the attorney's house, and they were talking. And he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm just working on this fucking printer." And he goes, "What's the problem?" He goes, "The printer doesn't work. I mean, I don't know why nobody can fix a printer, right? And they never work." And he's like, "How long have you been working on that?" He said, 3 fucking hours. Now I got to get on tech support, and I'm waiting on hold with the Philippines. He said, "How long have you been on hold?" He said, 45 minutes. He said, "Are you going to spend the day doing this?" He said, "I have to get it done." And he went, that printer is so far outside of his zone of genius. He loves practicing law. He's really good at it. He could find a kid who loves tinkering with computers, give him the $50 to fix the thing because this is in that kid's zone of genius. And to your point, he's somebody who's skilled at it and able to do it. But more importantly, it's something that the kid really likes to do, right?
Yeah.
This is not in his zone of genius. He has no passion for this thing whatsoever. So it's sort of that point between something like maybe like cooking. If you wanted to, I would offer that if you wanted to be somebody that is going to write a cookbook, do a television show, or have people come to your home for lessons, yeah, it should be something that you're an expert in so that you can do. But if you love it, then to his point, the goal is to live in that zone full time. Okay, so here's the lesson, and we're going to move on to upper limit, which I think that's an interesting.
Well, no, can you share with them, because I cut you off in the beginning because I felt like we needed to have this conversation before you.
That's what I'm about to do.
Okay.
Let's go back to the question. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do while making the greatest contribution to the world? So he said, look, people pay me $25,000, CEOs, to come in and spend the day with them. And more often than not, when I do this exercise with them, they say they got their $25,000 back in the first 10 minutes that we meet.
And we're going to get it for free?
And we're going to get it for free. I was like, okay, well, how does that work? He said, I have them go into a room, they close the door, and I say, here's the question. I want you to read this question, take 3 deep breaths, then say, and do it again 5 times. So we'll do one as an example. Imagine.
Oh, sound effects on this one.
I'm walking into the room, close the door.
Slammed it. But...
And I'm reading the question. And you have to read it with a tone of So it's. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do while making my greatest contribution to the world? And then you do it again. 3 deep breaths, said the same way, except this go around, you emphasize a different word. How can I spend the majority of my time doing what I most love to do while making my greatest contribution to the world? After you do that 5 times in that way, 3 deep breaths, emphasizing a different word in the sentence, saying telling your brain that it's a question that you want an answer to, you will come away with something. Something is going to flash before your eyes. In your case, it might be cooking. In my case, it might be writing or Whatever. Okay.
So to go back though, the question, we were stopping at what you most love to do. There's more to it. It's while making your greatest contribution to the world.
That's right.
So it's not just what do you love to do. It's what do you love to do while making your greatest contribution to the world. That changes it because then that makes sense. First of all, cooking is not going to be my greatest contribution to the world, but who the hell knows in the future?
Then answer it. What comes to mind
in
to you?
My current life right now, it is what I'm about to embark on is writing this book about something that is my zone of genius and taking adult concepts that are in personal development and making them child friendly and teaching them to children. Because we have done this with Sophia since she was born. We did this with Demi when she was there. And so we have almost, how old's Demi? 24? We have 20 years of experience taking adult personal development concepts and making them child friendly and in planting the seed. And I think that's really important. So that would be in my moment right now would be the thing that I love to do. I do it every day with her. And I would make a great contribution if I could take all of these concepts and put them in one place.
If I said to you that you can spend the majority of your time taking these adult concepts of personal development towards children, and that's where a bulk of your day is spent, or the majority of your time, among other things you're interested in, but if this is a big piece of that, how does that feel in your body?
It actually feels great. And for the listener, I had this aha yesterday. So this is a new concept of even embarking on this. And if I think about building let's call it a social media presence in this lane, writing a book in this lane, talking on podcasts in this lane, that's actually the most exciting thing that I've embarked on. And I think I started to do it. Like I started with creating the gratitude journal that Sophia and I do. I started with that, right? And then I have a travel journal that I actually just published that has similar kinds of reflective questions about travel. It's not just where'd you go and, what did you do? There's some other kind of reflective questions put into that. Because I think it's important for kids to reflect on the positive things that happened in a day. And, like the last page of this this travel journal is write a thank you letter to somebody about the trip. And it could be a thank you letter to their parents. It could be a thank you letter to if they stayed in a hotel and the staff was great. So I think I'm naturally doing some of these things, but I've never really thought about it as a lane or a zone of genius. And right now I'm having this, like I'm playing with it in my brain right now and stepping into it like emotionally, I guess would be the word, before I really embark on it.
Well, this is really great because I love how you highlighted the second half of this, because in the interview, and we'll link up that interview, these episodes should probably come out around the same time. In that interview, he really did talk about contribution. So for example, he said, when I finally just decided to write from my heart, I wrote The Big Leap. And when I wrote The Big Leap, Oprah called. And I went from selling 1 million to selling 10 million. And it was remarkable at how much my life changed when I wrote from my heart. So let me give you two things from my camp that are going to sound like they're opposed to each other, but perhaps they're not. So, we were talking yesterday, and he gave me a nice compliment. He said, you're one of the greatest interviewers I've ever been interviewed, and I've done like 3,000 of these. And I said, that was very nice of you, and I get that a lot. And I know that sounded obnoxious what I said, but I'm saying that specifically to make this point, that it is something that people point out in my interviews, because I am a natural interviewer. I'm good at it, and I'm curious as two cats. I am just really, really, really interested in what somebody has to say, whether it's a famous author or a cab driver. I mean, you've witnessed that your whole life with me, right?
Yeah.
And he talked about how things, when you're in that zone, things start to appear for you. Like, when he got into his zone of really writing from his heart, which he believes is one of his zone of geniuses, he wound up writing a best-selling book and wound up getting on Oprah, right? And so opportunities happen. And so I'm someone that I think is really good at interviewing. I like interviewing. And then I had somebody, reach out. I had a coffee with her yesterday, and she wants me to come in as a guest lecturer for her students here in Florence to teach future travel writers on how to interview. And so, when I mentioned that to him, he said, well, that's the surefire sign that that you're in your zone of genius, right? Things start to happen. But conversely, as I look over at my stack of books here, and I look at Frances May's Under the Tuscan Sun and Stanley Tucci's Taste Book, and I think about, Robert Schmeckel Murgatroyd sitting down to write his...
Can we please make that your pen name? Schmeckel Murgatroyd?
Schmeckel Murgatroyd sitting down to write his book. And do I like writing? I fucking love it. I feel like I'm lost in another world, and I get excited every time I sit down to write. It's hard. It's frustrating. It doesn't come easy. I walk away from it often feeling like it was terrible. I'm not proud of it, and I got to look at it again.
Is that all really true? Because if you make one post on social media with it, you get so much feedback that's positive, to the point that the local magazine, the Florentine, asked you to write a column.
No, that's not my point. That's not my point. You're missing it.
Oh.
It's the torture to get to the end product of creating the post, right? So what you didn't see is the 7 other iterations.
Well, that's not true, because you did post one of the iterations one day, and you woke up to a bunch of comments about how shitty your writing was.
There you go. Okay, that's a great example.
And how you can't use punctuation for shit.
I posted the way I write is I write a sloppy copy and I just dump it all out. It's not written well. It's not grammatically correct, and for whatever the reason, my clipboard grabbed the wrong version. It didn't get the new version, and I posted it and went to sleep. I woke up with 23 fucking grammar police that just went like all over me. Anyway, so here's my point. My point is, I'm certainly, to your point, don't consider myself to be a genius when it comes to writing. I do not. When it comes to interview, though, I feel stronger. I feel like I am really... I mean, look, genius, it's never easy to go, I'm a genius at anything.
Yeah, no, you're a genius interviewer.
But I feel like it is.
500 episodes, I'm pretty sure you proved that one.
So... Well, my point is more from my perspective.
Yeah.
How do I feel about saying it? Because I know somebody listening right now is going, well, I'm really, really fucking good at this, but I don't know if I'm a genius at it, right? So you get that sort of play. So I gave you 2 examples, right? One of them where I could go, yeah, okay, I'm really good at this. I could say, yeah, I fall into that category.
And you love it, but do you love it?
And I love it.
Is it a contribution?
Well, this is my point. It's the other, that's why I brought this up. This is the other half of that. Do I feel like I can contribute my interviewing skills to the world, but is it my greatest contribution to the world? No, it's not my greatest contribution to the world. I feel the exact opposite with writing, and I'll tell you why. I feel like when I look, I mean, this is just there's no fucking reality, right? It's all our perception.
Yeah.
So when I look and I see Stanley Tucci's book sitting here next to Frances May's book, right?
Yeah.
Or even I got Yuval Harari next to it. I look at that and I go, when he's long gone, that book is sitting on somebody's shelf, and it's a fucking good book. It is a book.
Timeless.
It's timeless. And that, to me, falls into something that I can say is one of the greatest contributions that I can give to the world, how I'm framing contribution, right? I'm framing contribution like legacy and when I'm gone and all of that stuff. So that sentence, there's a lot packed in that sentence. How can I spend the majority of my time? 1. 2, doing what I most love to do. 3, making the greatest contribution to the world.
I'm going to stop you and I'm going to flip. Are you ready for interviewing to become your zone of genius? Because I'm about to make it your zone of genius with one idea.
Okay.
So you're looking at it as a greatest contribution of teaching it. But what if your greatest contribution is in pulling out of people like Gay Hendricks
Right.
what is really meant in their work and spreading that beautiful concept with the world?
Okay.
So do you love it?
Yeah.
You love interviewing.
Yeah, I love interviewing.
And do you think it's a great contribution to the world?
The way you framed it, yes.
So then you're in.
Yeah. So now
You
this,
may or may not want to teach
now,
it.
now this is interesting. Okay. Now this is
So now you have two.
Yeah, and he has 10.
So if all you had to do in your life, if all you had to do was write and interview,
I can feel the change in my body.
then you're
Right.
in.
Okay. So now this is the point, right? So now we go, okay, these are the things. All right. So he gives an example to me where he said, I had some, and he said this all publicly, so I don't mind sharing it.
Recorded in the interview.
Recorded in the interview. He said, I had some success. When you get on Oprah and you write books, you sell 10 million of them.
Yeah.
That's success. That has led into seminars and all the shit that he does, right? And so he went from, making a living to making a living. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so he started investing, and he bought a ski house, and he bought an office building. And then one day he'd come home and the wife said, hey, the snow caved in the solar panel at the top. We got to get somebody out there to put another solar panel on because it's too much for the blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, all right, we'll get that fixed. And then another week he comes home and the wife says to him, hey, the person who's handling the finances for the office building said that, we're under capacity by 20% and we're not going to meet these goals. And he's like, okay, well, I got to get out there and find a way to get, more people into the office building. And then he went, fuck it. This is not in my zone of genius. This is now blocking my zone of genius.
Ooh, that's good.
Want to be spending my time doing the things I love to do, writing, and in the example you just gave with me, writing and interviewing and, cooking and writing, or maybe the better example for you is taking bigger concepts for children or self-improvement concepts and scaling them down so children can use them. But what do you have? You have the ski house, the office building, and all of these things, fixing the printer with the attorney, all of these things. He said, my goal is to live in my zone of genius full time. So he started with 10 minutes. And when he wrote the book a little bit prior to 2000, I believe, and he said, I just had a big goal that by the time I hit the year 2000, when that clock turned over, that I am never going to, as much as I can help it, never spend any time not doing things that are in my zone of genius. And he said, you know what? He said, I wake up. He said, I used to be a night owl, and I don't know what happened when I got into my 70s. All of a sudden, I started waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's happening to you now.
It's happening to me now. It's very strange how it happens. It's just, so he said, I get up, and he said, he's in love with his wife, and he said, my sweet,
just like you,
my sweet darling wakes up, and she gets up around 7:30.
Like me.
And
we're twinning.
Yeah. And he said, I write. I use that time in the morning from let's call it 5 to 7. I do 2 hours a day of writing. And he said, I never have felt more connected, more alive, more on purpose to what I want. And then I love doing interviews like this. He said, so I just finished my writing because it was early California time. I just finished my writing, and now I'll do, he said, my sweet spot is 2 or 3 of these.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll spend 2 or 3 of them once a week doing that. And he said, and then in the afternoon, I love doing gardening. And I'm going to spend, I live in California. I'm in Ojai, and it's beautiful. And I got 2 oak trees that are 300 years old right outside my window. And then I move on to that. So my life, he's still generating. He's fucking almost 80 years old, and he just wrote his next book, right? So he's living.
Yeah.
He is, when you listen to this interview, he's the happiest fucking guy you have ever seen. All right. So one more concept, the concept of upper limit. This one's interesting. Each of us has an upper limit to the amount of success with which we are comfortable. These are our upper limits.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to say we're doing this on another episode. because this is too long and that is too good.
Okay.
Because that is literally my life right now.
All right.
And I have a lot to say.
Okay, perfect.
So you're going to have to tune into the next episode.
All right. So you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. Number one, if you don't listen to the Next Chapter podcast, please go and listen. Link in the show notes. It's Rob's newest podcast, and he's killing it over there with amazing guests. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if you have not done this yet, please, 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 please give us a 5-star review, write a little something down there, and we would really appreciate it on whatever thing. How do you do it? Whatever thing you listen to us on.
Let me give you the why behind it, right? So everybody says, hey, can you rate and review? And hey, can you subscribe to my channel? Just click the little bell, ding, like every YouTube.
Yeah.
But here's the reason. We love doing this, right? This is in our zone of genius. We enjoy it. You can tell from the beginning that we're fucking laughing at each other, giving each other shit. This is a labor of love. It's a passion that we have. And the only way that this gets into the earballs of people is by you rating and reviewing it, because it moves it up the charts. More people see it. The more people see it, the more happier couples we have.
And if it's in our zone of genius, we also want it to be the greatest contribution. And the only way that can happen is if more people listen, right?
There you go.
All right. So that's number 2. And number 3, what I want to say is, if you like this kind of insanity that we bring, you may be interested in our Patreon community. In our Patreon community, we have 2 different membership levels, and we do an additional private Patreon-only podcast called On the Fly, where we, if you can believe it, are a bit more unfiltered and uncensored in our commentary, and we tackle interesting and not for public consumption topics. So if that's interesting to you, that will be in our show notes as well.
I love the term I heard somebody use recently. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Shalene Johnson, because I love everything she does. No, it wasn't her. It was somebody else. It's public facing. There's something that you do that's public facing, but then there's other things that it's not really public facing.
That's true. I mean, but we're ourselves regardless of where we are, but we do more unique topics in our Patreon.
We're about to record an On the Fly episode.
Yeah.
And it's about taboos.
Where it's about things that are taboo in the American perspective that are not taboo here. And the proof is in the pudding here, because they don't have the problems related to those taboos that we do in America. And so we are going to go all in on that. And I'll give you a little thing. I'll give you a little teaser. The instigation of this was, I was in the cafe this morning, and I'm looking at 2 teenagers in the corner, like making out and checking each other for hickeys, which was so funny and so cute at the same time. But in full view of everyone, and in America, we would A, not be doing that. 2, not be doing that, not because it's not proper, because I don't think any 12 or 15-year-old cared about being proper, but because you're scared like your Aunt Lucy is going to see you and you're going to get in trouble. And so we're going to talk about stuff like that.
All right. That's it, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye. The hustle culture is going to encourage you to keep grinding away at work to accomplish your dreams. And I'm going to tell you to do the opposite. Break out from behind your desk and join us on our next Work Hard, Play Hard Platinum event in the crystal clear blue waters of the south of France. So Kim and I created this experience because we learn best by hanging out with bright, successful, interesting entrepreneurial couples in fascinating destinations around the world. So come join us for this platinum event in the south of France. It is limited to only 8 couples and is by application only. So get yourself out of the day-to-day operations of running your business. Meet some fantastic entrepreneurial couples. Get re-inspired to innovate your business again and enjoy the beauty of the south of France. Check out the link in the description to learn more.